What's up, guys? We have a banger. Apparently, there's a couple of ambushes that were caught on helmet cam, body cam. I recognize this one that's on the screen right now, but there's a couple here that are going to be sick. So, first off, viewer discretion advised. And second off, let me introduce myself. My name is Saxon. I go by Vegas here in Ukraine. I joined the International Legion for the Defense of Ukraine in January of 2023. I'm still here in Ukraine. I'm no longer with the Legion. I'm now with Azov, specifically Azov's International Battalion. This one right here. I'm trying to figure this out. This one right here. We just finished up with a deployment not too long ago and did some really strong work. And a large percentage of the people in this battalion came from this channel right here. Literally, you subscribers are here fighting Russians in Ukraine and killing Russians in Ukraine. It's badass, dude. Super, super proud of the boys and girls. And if you want to be a part of this, or you've been thinking about coming out to Ukraine, maybe you're already in Ukraine, you've got a friend or family member in Ukraine that's looking for a solid unit, tell them to hit us up at Azov. I'll link the application in the description below. It's like 4 questions. Fill it out, and a recruiter will message you in like an hour or 2 hours. It's a really streamlined process. Anyways, let's watch this, guys. It says M249 cuts through truck full of Russian soldiers. Let's check it out. Dude, literally sawing trees in half. Look at this. Look at the tree in front of the truck. Hold on, what? That dude's got a PKM. He's just firing it standing up.
This wasn't a battle you'd find on any map.
I forgot to mention, the channel is Jeremiah. We've reacted to a couple of his things. Very solid channel. Check him out. I'll also link him in the description, and I'll tag him in the title.
There were no tanks rolling down the street, no artillery thundering overhead, and no massive airstrikes lighting up the sky. Just a small team of Ukrainian special operators, silent, camouflaged, and waiting in the trees. For the Russian soldiers, the area of Bakhmut had become hell on earth, but this operation was going to take things to a whole nother level. In early 2023, this Russian unit was about to walk straight into the arms of death without ever seeing it coming. The team on the ground belonged to Ukrainian Special Operations Forces, the SSO, highly trained, battle-hardened special operations.
So we use M249s as well, one of the multiple machine guns that we deploy in Azov, and this thing is an absolute savage, dude. There's been a couple of different times where some of the guys have been ambushed. I don't want to share too much information, but basically because of these M249s, the guys were ambushed, but they were able to gain fire superiority and win the gunfight when they were at an extreme disadvantage. These machine guns literally saved the units, taking 0 casualties. Pretty incredible, dude. So these, I've got nothing but good things to say about the M249.
The team on the ground belonged to Ukrainian Special Operations Forces, the SSO, highly trained, battle-hardened experts in reconnaissance, sabotage, and when the opportunity arose, ambush warfare. They've been watching the same path for days, logging Russian movements, counting personnel, timing patrols, waiting for a window where the enemy got complacent. And now, the trap was set. But the operators weren't completely alone. They had eyes in the sky. Through the grainy white hot of the thermal drone camera, we can see a convoy of Russian vehicles and infantry, at least a dozen strong, weaving through the woods just outside a rural position north of Bakhmut. They're armed, but scattered. No spacing, no overwatch, and no idea. This wasn't but scattered. No spacing, no overwatch, and no...
So I wanted to pause right here because what's going on with the camera here? I'm like, I just need to stay sitting back like this. This is a thermal drone camera in the midday. Look how easy it still is to see thermal signatures. There's this misconception like that you have to use thermal optics and thermal imaging only during like winter and at night or something like that, where you would think these the heat signatures would differentiate a lot so they would stand out more. No, this is a nice day in the middle of the day in Ukraine, and these guys stick out like sore thumbs. And this, we saw the footage of them in the trees. This is a relatively thick tree line, and look at these guys, man. You could straight up see them. You could see their legs, their arms. These guys are prone. This guy's moving up, firing. I mean, crazy thermal drones, man.
Idea. This wasn't just a lucky catch, it was a deliberate setup. The SSO had chosen the terrain carefully. A natural L-shaped choke point was formed by tree cover and a rise in elevation, making the perfect kill zone. And now, the Russians were right in the middle of it. On the ground, the SSO team waited behind fallen logs and makeshift brush blinds. One operator was on a squad automatic weapon, another had a grenade launcher preloaded. The rest carried short-barreled rifles, compact, fast, and lethal. There were no shouted commands, no radio chatter, just a hand signal, a breath, and then fireworks.
Давай, Жень, кабинчик. Sabırlı, sabırlı. Всегда хавшгыл, что?
Gunfire erupted like thunder. The first two Russian soldiers dropped instantly. A third spinned and screamed before a grenade burst beside him, sending shrapnel into his neck. The vehicles quickly stepped on the gas and attempted to gun it through the kill zone, but the Ukrainians hammered them with small arms fire, quickly disabling them. From the drone feed, it looked surgical, but from the ground, it was total chaos. One Russian soldier tried to dive behind a tree. He never made it. A clean shot punched straight through his chest. Another stumbled backwards into the woods, firing his AK blindly behind him, hoping he could escape. But a round from a Ukrainian rifle quickly caught up to him. The ambush was over in less than 90 seconds. Not a single Ukrainian was hit. And just like that, they all...
Hey, shout out to my boy Jason as well for linking me this video, sending it to my email. Appreciate you, brother. Keep sending them.
Quietly held their positions in the woods for just a few minutes, making sure there weren't any more stragglers coming up the hill behind the Russian soldiers. And with the drone overhead quickly confirming no more heat signatures in the area, the Ukrainians...
So, I don't want to nitpick, right? But we're watching multiple different fights, right? These clips that we're watching are multiple different fights, different units, completely different areas, different situations altogether. This drone footage is not that same ambush. It looks similar, but look at this truck. This is not the truck in the ambush. Also, the guy, well, I'll explain more when we watch more.
Pushed out from their positions and began searching the bodies and vehicles. The forest was completely quiet. No more gunfire, no movement, just smoke, dirt, and the cooling bodies of Russian soldiers. Through the drone's thermal camera, the heat signatures told the story clear as day. Bodies...
These guys are not SSO. either. If I remember correctly, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I thought this was actually Georgian Legion. I could be wrong, but this happened relatively early on. Obviously, it's in Bakhmut, so we're talking at least a year and a half ago. Yeah, so different.
Scattered along the tree line like broken chess pieces. But the SSO team didn't stick around to celebrate. No way to know for sure if one of the Russian soldiers managed to get a call out for reinforcements. They quickly swept the area under the cover of overwatch from the drone above, grabbing intel off the bodies, taking anything useful. Radios, maps, notebooks, phones, even patches. Every scrap of data could lead to their next ambush. Then they quickly disappeared back into the thick woods like they were never there. Back at the SSO forward base, the footage from the overhead drone was downloaded and analyzed frame by frame. What they found confirmed what they already suspected. This wasn't an elite Russian unit, it was a mix of poorly trained and lightly armed
That's not the same. This isn't the same ambush.
Russian infantry and Wagner mercenary. Their spacing was non-existent, their reaction time was slow, and worst of all, they walked straight into a terrain choke point without ever sending a scout. They never had a chance. All in all, 13 Russian soldiers were confirmed dead and multiple vehicles were destroyed with 0 Ukrainian casualties. It was a perfectly executed ambush, but for the Ukrainian Special Operations soldiers, it was just another day in Bakhmut. Several hours later, when more Russian soldiers arrived on scene and recovered the bodies, they found a single patch stitched in Ukrainian blue and gold left on one of the fallen Wagner fighters.
This is Azov right here. These guys. Oh, what'd I just do, dude?
But the message was clear as day.
No, I'm sorry, this is not Azov. But we did just see this video, actually, so this is also not the ambush guys.
You are not alone in these woods. In the following days after the ambush, Russian patrols in the area changed dramatically. Troop movement slowed, infantry units were pulled back and replaced with artillery and drones. That one engagement, one precise, brutal trap in the forest had disrupted an entire sector of the front. And if you thought this footage was crazy, in the next 30 seconds, you are going to see the real footage from the biggest assault Ukrainian special forces have ever pulled off. Because of YouTube's incredibly weird and confusing policies, I can actually show more graphic footage towards the end of the video, so if you've made it this far, congratulations. This is where things really start to ramp up.
Oh, yeah.
Following Russia's invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022, Russia desperately wanted control of Snake Island. Snake Island is located just off Ukraine's southernmost coast and is a perfect place to control all traffic flowing to Ukraine's biggest ports. Whoever controls Snake Island controls the flow of trade goods in the Black Sea. So as the war kicked off, control of Snake Island became priority number 1 for the Russian Black Sea Fleet. At the start of the war, Snake Island was held by only 13 Ukrainian guards, so its capture wasn't a particularly difficult task even for Russia. So Russia moved its premier missile cruiser, the Moskva, just off the coast of Snake Island. The Moskva is a force to be reckoned with, manned by a crew of 500 sailors, and equipped with anti-ship missiles, surface-to-air missiles, a shipborne helicopter, and 130mm guns. And the Moskva wasn't alone. She was accompanied by the patrol ship Vasily Baikov. It doesn't carry as many weapons as the Moskva, but it is still a serious threat to the men on Snake Island. On February 24th, the two ships approached Snake Island. The Russian captain called over the radio to the Ukrainian soldiers and offered them a chance to surrender. Without hesitation, one of the Ukrainian guards responded with the famous statement, "Russian warship, go F yourself." Minutes later, the Moskva opened fire on Snake Island with their cannons, pounding the small island. Ukraine soon confirmed they had lost all communications with the island. Russian soldiers then loaded up onto assault craft.
Legendary situation here. The soldiers on Snake Island. There's a photo where it shows like the Ukrainians on Snake Island. They're like flipping off the Russian warship out in the ocean, and that photo is on bottles of vodka now. It's on T-shirts. It's on bumper stickers. It's on decals. It's on so many things. About these guys right here, because if I remember correctly, they all died from this. All the Ukrainians died here
and made landfall. Most of the Ukrainian soldiers on the island were killed, but some were captured, and the fate of those men still remains unknown. Ukraine desperately needed to retake the island, but first they would need to take out the Moskva, which was just patrolling the waters around, protecting the island. So on the 14th of April, Ukraine launched an attack against the Moskva. The details remain mostly classified, but it's believed that the US provided targeting data to 2 Ukrainian Neptune anti-ship missiles. Some sources believe that the Moskva was distracted by a Ukrainian drone and that at least part of its air defense equipment was not fully operational. But regardless of how it was done, Ukraine managed to sink Russia's prized ship. Russia, however, claims that a cigarette caused an explosion, which led to the destruction of the ship. But the US backs Ukraine's claims that it used anti-ship missiles to sink it. The Moskva was Russia's only anti-air weapon protecting the island, so now Ukraine was free and clear to start bombing runs on the island, and so for the next month, Ukraine did just that. Needless to say, life for the Russian soldiers on Snake Island became a living nightmare. Ukraine's next step for retaking the island was to capture 3 Russian-controlled Black Sea oil rigs near the island. Russia was using these oil rigs as radio jamming platforms, making Ukrainian operations in the area extremely difficult, including any attempt to retake Snake Island. So Ukrainian special forces then pulled off one of the coolest military operations ever recorded.
Yeah, this was sick, dude.
They used rigid hull inflatable boats and jet skis to sneak up underneath the oil rigs. They then climbed the side of the oil rigs all the way up to the top and got in some pretty intense gunfights, quickly dispatching all the Russian soldiers before they even knew they were really there. The operators then quickly destroyed all of the jammers on board the 3 oil rigs, and the operation...
That's some high-speed shit, dude. I remember when that happened, I was thinking, what the fuck? Because you think about like Navy SEALs, this is kind of like something that would be in their mission set, right? And even during training exercises, SEALs die because of how dangerous this shit is, and falling in the water, or falling off the boat, or falling off the rig. And these Ukrainians rolled up in the middle of the night and did this shit while firing and getting fired at, and then did it to 2 more oil rigs that same night, so 3 in total. That's crazy, dude.
Was officially done and a huge success. Ukrainian special operations made this incredibly difficult and risky.
That's GUR, G-U-R. That's the GUR logo. The Intelligence Forces of Ukraine.
The operation look like a breeze. And with that, it was now finally time for a full-scale assault on Snake Island. Ukraine kicked things off with a major air assault. Several attack helicopters hammered the island, forcing the Russian soldiers to take cover indoors, ensuring the transport helicopters could land safely. Once it was clear to land, Ukrainian special operators jumped out of Mi-8 helicopters onto the island. The only bunkers on the island the Russians could use for cover from the air assault were placed directly in the center of the island altogether. So all the Ukrainian operators had to do was lay down suppressive fire and push uphill towards the center of the island to clear those bunkers.
That's all they had to do.
The Ukrainians quickly reached the buildings and started throwing frag grenades through the windows. After waiting just a few seconds for all the grenades to blow, they quickly made entry and cleared the buildings of all Russian soldiers. During the assault, several Russian soldiers managed to escape into the Black Sea on small Russian boats. Ukraine didn't pursue them, and it's unclear how many Russians were killed on the island. Of course, Russia is claiming that 0 Russian soldiers were killed, and the men who left did so simply because they had finished their assignment on the island. But Russia also claimed that a cigarette sank their battleship, so you can't exactly take their word for it. Regardless, losing Snake Island was a huge tactical loss for Russia, and it's believed that Russia lost nearly $1 billion in equipment attempting to hold Snake Island. With the island now clear, the Ukrainian operators quickly raised their flag high on the island, marking the official capture of Snake Island, and to this day, Ukraine still holds it.
That was cool, man. That's this is, like I said, this is older footage, but it's cool to see because, for one, you forget that this was actually kind of like a conventional war at the beginning, right? Doing shit like using naval warfare and being able to do large-scale assaults and using helicopters and using fighter jets for aerial bombardments. None of that goes anymore. Nothing flies in Ukraine except for drones. There's nothing in the water because drones take those out, any boats. You can't attack in large sized units like that anymore because of drones. So, interesting, man. I mean, this has changed so much. The strategies and the effectiveness of all these different strategies. It's pretty cool. Anyways, check him out. This is Jeremiah again. He has some cool footage. I'll link him in the description below, as well as the application as of, if you're interested. And on your way out to Ukraine, hit us up, man. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you. Peace.